Good afternoon, everybody. I'm told that our presenter is ready when you are. So welcome to the third event in Media Arts Day 2024 at the Georgia Tech Library. This is called EmpathyBytes and Virtual Archives. And the Multimedia and Emerging Technologies librarian is going to present on the VIP class. How long has it been going? 4 years of VIP classes, and do a demonstration of the work they're doing with this VR goggle headset. So please join me in welcoming Alison Valk to Media Arts Day.
Well, thanks for coming out, you guys. Yeah, I'm excited to talk to you about this VIP, EmpathyBytes, which started about 4 years ago. And it's really been exciting to see how it's grown over the years. I'm here with one of my students, Jack English. I'm really excited that he's going to present with us today. He's the VR team lead and has been for the last 3 semesters. He's a second-year CS major with media and systems architecture threads, and also a VR developer. So he's got a lot to share a little bit later on. So I thought I would start. I know some of you may be already familiar with the VIP infrastructure, but just for those who aren't, I thought I would just do a quick recap. Basically, the VIP consortium or the VIP programs, which are sort of available and offered at various universities across the world, provides kind of the framework for this and has allowed us to build this program. So basically what it is it is a form of a cure, which is a course-based undergraduate research experience. It's a framework that allows students to get course credit for working with faculty on long-term research initiatives. So it's expected that it's going to be iterative and go from semester to semester. And, obviously knowledge transfer and documentation strategy is a really big part of the learning objectives of a VIP. It's also all about working in multidisciplinary teams and team coordination. And I'm really grateful to Georgia Tech's VIP program that has allowed us to build this. It's given me an avenue for working with interdisciplinary projects. All right, so what's our focus? If you peruse the VIP site, you'll see all kinds of teams and programs there. But what is our focus? Our focus is basically how can advanced technologies like multimedia, emerging technologies, and AR, VR, things like that, improve access to resources and enhance empathy. And we're specifically looking at communities on campus, library resources, archives, things like that. As I mentioned, this class has gone on for me for about 4 years now. I started with about 3 or 4 students, and it's grown to almost 25. So that's been really exciting for me to see it grow so much. Project management skills and terminology are really key, and I emphasize that a lot throughout the teams to keep them coordinated and to keep our documentation together. But some of the 3, I guess, questions we're asking ourselves are, how is technology helping us better understand this community or collection? What new technologies can we explore or experiment with? I really encourage the students to try out new technologies, see what works, what doesn't. A lot of it is trial and error, and that's okay. That's part of this process. And how can we best communicate our research to others? I know in the last panel, people were talking about the importance of being able to communicate your research to a broad audience. And I think that is something that I hope out of anything my students will take away from this class, is how important it is to be able to not only do the research, but also communicate it to a broad audience so more folks can understand it. So how do I have this VIP team structured? It is basically at present, and it does vary depending on the makeup of the class, it's broken down into sub-teams. So we have our app team, which kind of focuses on an augmented reality app that accompanies some of our work. We have our emerging tech team, which Jack will be representing and talk a little bit further about. which kind of focuses on VR and immersive experiences. We have our media team, which they sort of do a lot of our documentation type things. They take pictures, they do behind the scenes documentaries. I'll show you a few of those a little bit later. They help with headshots and copy for the web. So we have somebody sort of tracking our work as we go along. Our web team creates our web presence. We do have a website, which has been continually improved year after year. And a little bit to show you here. This is kind of the breakdown, and I've sort of listed the technologies that each team is utilizing for their work. So something that I do, I would say it's 4 major sub-teams, but something that I do to kind of keep everybody on track at the beginning of the semester is I have them draft up a proposal. So part of that first 2 weeks is drafting up a proposal where they have to outline what their deliverables are going to be for the end of the semester. They list out their assumptions, what technologies they assume they're going to have access to. They'll list out what their key individual deliverables are going to be and how that contributes to the team effort. In addition, that helps with delegating responsibility. It also helps with individual grading too, and just seeing, who's pulling their weight and things like that. So with the contract, it's not set in stone. Something that I think is key to project management, as we all know, is things change as you get underway. And I want to provide a mechanism for my students to tell me if something is changing, they're not getting a resource they anticipated, something went wrong, they need more time. So we have change request process built into the system. About midway through, they can fill out a change request if something is not going to work out the way they thought originally in their original contract. And so we will review that together and see what is possible by the end of the semester. But yeah, here's just sort of a breakdown on the teams and what they're doing. The app team started with Swift and Xcode, which is iOS only. We ended up moving over to React Native because we wanted to develop for Android and iOS. Also, something that's been interesting in the last year is the students have really been learning about Figma, which is a user interface tool, and they've been doing that for some of their front-end design work. Emerging tech, it's Unity. I'm going to have Jack talk a little bit more about this later, but they were using photogrammetry and Blender to create the 3D images that you'll see later, and then also, putting some of that code on GitHub. All right, inspiration. So I always try to connect what we're doing to the bigger picture and the research that's happening, along with text research outside of tech and the world. And so I try to bring in real world examples of things that are going on. And so for instance, we've looked to inspiration from, I don't know if folks have heard about Backup Ukraine, the project where Ukrainian citizens are using 3D technology to preserve some of the cultural artifacts that could be potentially lost from warfare. One of the projects that sort of really kicked me off thinking about how we can make library archives more accessible through emerging technologies was what was happening at the University of Southern California. They're doing some really interesting work with illuminated manuscripts and making that more accessible through VR experiences. As you probably know, the more you touch and handle things, the more they will disintegrate, especially for archival folks. And so we can potentially create these virtual experiences that don't do so much damage to the artifacts. And so that was sort of something that I started thinking about for this VIP. And so I've sort of looked to some of these projects for inspiration. It's sort of interesting to explore that juxtaposition between real objects and virtual creations. All right, a couple more inspiration projects. For the app team, I had the app team look at something called Enter the Room, which is an augmented reality experience where it sort of gives you the experience of warfare, being what it's like to actually be bombed on. And so I had, especially since we're dealing with empathy, I had them kind of look at some of these emotionally driven games and experiences. And so Enter the Room was one of the ones that I had them look at. That was something that was done by the International Committee of the Red Cross. So experiences firsthand of warfare. And finally, Tuvalu is a country that is dramatically going underwater because of global warming. And they're actually undergoing a project right now where they are 3D scanning a lot of their cultural artifacts in their land as they are as they're feeling the effects of climate change. So all this, I just really wanted my students to take a look at what's going on outside of the Georgia Tech bubble and other resources to think about and act as inspiration for their projects. So our work, this is just a little snapshot. You're going to see the videos shortly, but one of the things the students have done is using photogrammetry. They have scanned some of our artifacts in the archive. And these were the technologies they were using, 3D Scanner app. Once all the pictures were taken, they put them together into an object file and then bring it into Blender and essentially work with the textures, filling in the gaps that weren't covered by the photogrammetry. And then, of course, Unity for development. And we'll get a chance to see that video in just a second. The app team is making like an accompanying app along with this. This semester, I think they're going to be creating an educational game associated with some of the artifacts that we scanned. But as I mentioned earlier, we started with Swift and Xcode, but that limited us to iOS. So we moved over to React Native so that it could be on both platforms, Android and iOS. But essentially, the app kind of takes you through some of the resources and artifacts that we've scanned, along with it plays a lot of the audio interviews and videos that we've created as well. All right. And as I mentioned before, we have a website. It began with WordPress, but we found that somewhat limiting. So we then migrated to other platforms. Currently, we are on Drupal, and we're working with CSS and some JavaScript. But the website seems to improve each year. But key to all the teams, just to make that process seamless from semester to semester, is the documentation strategy. I would say probably the biggest hurdle for us to get over is knowledge transfer from semester to semester. When senior students cycle off, new students come in. So we're trying to develop an onboarding process for the new students who come into this VIP. And the senior students will take on kind of a mentoring role where they will help train the new students coming into the project. All right, and I think this is just a very quick kind of demo of the website. It'll sort of show you some of the what it looks like. We use this to not only showcase the research, but also recruit new students through the VIP program. So this is shared with potential students who might be interested. I'll talk about the collections later, but one aspect of our project is that we go out into campus communities and do oral histories and interviews and videos. That's the media team focuses on that quite a bit. And so those are included on the website as well, which is some of what you're seeing. And we showcase each team sort of gets an area where they can spotlight some of what they're doing. And each team is responsible for developing the content for their section of the website. Here are some of our 3D models. These are actual artifacts from the Georgia Tech Library archives. And so people can actually interact with them on the website. And we're hoping to build that out further as we go along. And the media team will do behind the scenes interviews to help document the process again. I think that's a really sort of important part of it, the metacognition aspect of it. All right. Stop this here. We'll go to the next one. So I mentioned that the media team, they do our video production, our audio interviews, our logo design, everything student created and student driven. I'm so proud of them. They've done like just an outstanding job over the years. This right here is one of our research posters. They get the opportunity to present. So I encourage my students to present and share their research anytime they can. For instance, Jack is here to talk with us today. And so I want to give them as many avenues as possible to share their research. And we're trying to put together kind of a behind the scenes documentary. I'll show you a little bit of Wilson's interview. He did a great job sort of talking about his feelings about the project. Let's see, I'll turn.
Yeah, I'm Wilson, and I'm the web lead for EmpathyBytes. And what our team essentially is responsible for is the development and design of the EmpathyBytes websites, its visuals, and all of the backend content as well. Yeah, this semester our primary goal has been completely revamping the website actually. So our website in prior semesters has traditionally been a WordPress website, and we found that there was not a lot of flexibility with what we wanted to do, and the website itself didn't really look that great. We wanted to transition it to be more up to date with modern web standards and design practices. And we thought that a good way to go about it was to create it from scratch. So basically we're starting all over this semester, and we've been working across the design and development teams to create a cohesive vision for what EmpathyBytes should look like for people who are entering the website for the first time. So I consider myself a people person, even though I'm really an introvert. I really enjoy understanding people, their stories, and their experiences. And a big part of EmpathyBytes is discovering communities on campus and learning more about community members. And from that, you can start to understand everything that's happening on campus, because Georgia Tech has, I believe, 30,000 or so students across its undergrad and graduate population. And there's a lot of different communities on campus, a lot of different places where people find themselves, call themselves home, find places to interact with other people and learn about really cool things. So as a single undergraduate student, I only ever get to see a small slice of life in the communities that I'm a part of. Getting to understand the communities that a lot of other people are a part of and how that shapes their identity, how that shapes their experiences is really fascinating to me. And I think that being able to share these experiences with others through journalism, through research, and through emerging technologies is really integral to building a better overall community on campus. At the moment, throughout the semesters I've been a part of EmpathyBytes, we've been really low-key. We haven't really publicly advertised ourselves, and part of that has to do with the fact that we're still working on building our website, our apps, our identity, and so a lot of that isn't ready to really show off to the public yet. But what I would really like to see in the future is to see EmpathyBytes have a more public presence after everything is done and after we're ready to show our site, our stories, and our communities. I think it would be really cool for...
I'll go ahead and stop it there, but I think Wilson did a really great job. He kind of did that on the fly for our media team, which was wonderful. And we have different other interviews like that, which we hope to maybe stitch together for a sort of behind the scenes documentary type thing. we always try to document in all kinds of different modalities. All right, so diving into the nitty-gritty a little bit more, before I hand it off to Jack, photogrammetry was the main technique we used to 3D scan some of the artifacts that you'll get to see today. And essentially that was just taking a series of pictures, stitching them together, and then using Blender to piece them together. And I'm going to let Jack kind of go into more detail about that when he talks about that. So another part, you've been hearing references to community throughout this presentation. Something that we did in a previous semester, I always try to build outreach into the class. So we went to the body scan lab over in the architecture building. And I just sort of want the students to see sort of other areas of campus outside of their disciplinary silos. I think that's one of the beauty about VIPs is it can get people out of those disciplinary silos, which they tend to do once they hone in on their major or their research focus. And I think libraries, just being an interdisciplinary space by nature, are really positioned well to kind of help with these types of projects. So this was a situation, we went to the body scan lab and got a chance to see how they're using some of their 3D scanning technology over there. So really grateful to them for helping us out. So community, again, is a big part of it. We're hoping to continue exploring communities. One of our collections was exploration of the makerspace. So one of the previous semesters actually did a series of interviews on the makerspace, and those are currently on our website. But we've been kind of exploring the idea of other different types of communities. For instance, something that popped up was we talked about maybe exploring archival collections related to the first woman who matriculated at Georgia Tech, and maybe doing some series of interviews to accompany that as well. So audio, video, all a big part of the project. All right, so are you going to show this, Jack? Okay, I'll skip over this because Jack's going to show you this, but this is basically a video. It'll be a video tour of the archives and what it looks like right now. Don't be scared about the headset. If you have the opportunity to try it out, come try it out. You'll get to actually experience it as well. Let's see. And before I hand it off to Jack, Jack's the one speaking today, but I've worked with so many students over the last 4 years, and it really does take a village. And there are so many students. We try to put sort of our alumni on the website as well to make sure that they get credit for all the hard work that they've put in building it up from the start. And I'm just so grateful to all of them. In fact, I think I see one of our web team members here, Audrey. Big shout out to you for helping with the website last semester. All right, I guess I'm going to turn it over to you right at 2:30, Jack. Thank you so much for being here.
Awesome.
And you just press that to go forward or back.
All right, sweet. Is the mic on? You can hear me all right? Sweet. Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you're having a good day. I hope you're staying warm. My part of the presentation will be specifically going over in depth what the virtual reality team does. And yeah, so just to start off a little bit about myself, I'm going to keep it brief because Allison already kind of introduced me. But my name is Jack. I am a second/third year CS major. I have the media and sysarc threads. I'm very passionate about being a VR developer, and that's what I want to do post-college. And I've been in the VIP for 2 semesters. I joined last spring, and I became the team lead for the VR team last fall, and I plan on continuing it as team lead for the next 2 semesters. So just a show of hands, who here has ever used VR before? Who's ever tried it? Wow, okay. That's a lot more than I expected. That's nice to see. But anyway, for the people who haven't, you're probably wondering right now, what is the point of a VR museum? People who have tried it, you probably get it. But in my opinion, there are a couple very key points. The first one is accessibility. So to experience a traditional, like real life, normal exhibit, a couple things have to line up. You have to live near, you have to have a exhibit that you're interested in, that you want to see, something that you're interested in learning about. You also have to be geographically close to the specific museum. So if you don't live in the city of a specific exhibit, you're kind of locked out of seeing it. And lastly, you have to be like, the exhibit has to be open at the time that you want to see it. Because most exhibits only exist, they're only open for a couple months to a year, something like that. They might be reoccurring. But all of those things kind of make museum exhibits a little bit inaccessible to different types of people. So I believe that not as a replacement, but in addition to it, having the opportunity for VR museums where anyone, anywhere in the world at any time with a headset can experience similar or the same thing, I think that's great. It allows more discoverability, more education. And at the end of real life exhibits, all of those artifacts just go back into the archive and they're like kind of locked away for the most part. So people don't have the opportunity to experience most of them. And the second part, which Alison kind of talked about, was digital preservation. So the nature of real artifacts, even if they are in a even if they're in an archive, like climate controlled, you're doing everything to keep them preserved as well as possible, they're still going to degrade over long periods of time. That's just how it is. And so with the power of photogrammetry, which I'll explain in a little bit, 3D scanning, we can take high quality snapshots of these artifacts throughout time, and digital things never decay. So it's a great way to preserve things as well. So yeah, and there's other things in VR museums where you can think outside of the box, you can have it be more interactive, you can actually interact with objects, whereas in a museum you can't because you don't want to, ruin the artifacts. But you can have a more intimate experience with the objects, and you can do things that aren't possible in the real world, like having fully immersive scenes, having objects that play animations, play sounds, things like that. And it's more memorable, it's more educational. Like for example, if you have a pair of headphones, when you pick it up, they can play, like you can hear music coming from them. Just an idea. So moving on to last spring, my first semester in the VIP. This is the project that I inherited, and this is what I contributed to it over the first semester. And I'm going to go ahead and start out with a demo just to show you, and then explain everything you see a little bit later or afterwards. So excuse me while I set this up real quick. Okay. The other purpose of giving live VR demos is to hopefully show you guys where the state of the technology is at, because I have a feeling that many of you aren't familiar with it. Or if you have tried VR, you tried it years ago, and the technology has come a long way in that period of time. And I hope to have a couple like wow moments during the presentation, I guess. Sorry. Oh, yes, please. Yeah, switch back to Chrome. And there you go. And can you click full screen in the bottom right, please? In the bottom right. Oh, is he?
Do you want me to share? Sorry.
All right. So, all right, we're good. We're good. So first of all, I can see you guys right now in high resolution color. That's pretty amazing. And I'm gonna go ahead and open the old version of the archive. Oh wait, that's the wrong one. All right, excuse me. This one. And just navigate around it for a little bit. So this is the original museum. As you can see, it is like a traditional museum, kind of just inspired. Like there's not a lot of thought, a lot of inspiration put behind it. It's just white walls, wooden floor, and artifacts on pedestals. And you can see we have this little welcome screen here, some little options panel that I'm not going to mess with, and then you can dismiss it. And we can go up to these artifacts and interact with them. So some of these ones over here are some of the ones that were created before I joined the VIP, and they were manually created with 3D modeling tools like Blender. So this is an old Georgia Tech whistle. You see when you pick it up, there's text describing it, and you can move it around, see it really well. And we have a model plane, and you can, just look around the whole thing and mess around. You can see description about it. Another example is this Olympic torch over here, and this is actually animated with fire. So these look great, but there's a couple problems with them, which is that they're not completely accurate to the original artifacts. They're not fully accurate, and they take a long time to produce. They require artistic vision and a lot of Blender skills to manually craft them over a week or so. So at the beginning of last year, I didn't know anything about photogrammetry, but over the semester, I developed a really good workflow, and I basically introduced photogrammetry to the VIP, and here's examples of that. So this is a signed football, and it looks pretty good. And a bunch of other examples. Here's another signed football, and this is a Buzz plaque right here. I'm jumping around a little bit, but we have this old bookshelf or bookend, and I developed my workflow over the period of the semester. Every model I see here, I can tell things that I could have improved. This was one of the first models I did, and you can see kind of jagged edges along the edges, and that doesn't look great, but I improved that with continual iterations. And so with these older artifacts that were manually created, students were expected to create 2 or 3 of them per semester. I pumped out about 10 photogrammetry artifacts and over the semester. And I could do more if I were to repeat, because I really got the workflow down. These are Converse that Buzz wore in 1988. These are one of my favorites. I mostly just chose them because I thought they were really cool looking. So yeah, this was the state of the project before I became team lead. And lastly, these last 3 articles of clothing I'll talk more about them in a bit, but they are a little bit more realistic looking. And I will explain that in a minute, but it's a band uniform, an old T-sweater. And yeah, so I'm gonna stop the demo now and go back to the presentation. Thank you. Let me quit the app real quick because it's still playing music. Oops. All right, so do we need to change this screen sharing again? Okay. Can you come up and help me with that real quick? Is this screen being shared or? Good. All right, so how was this made? Oh, can you go back to the? No, I think you're good. Okay. How was it made? Bunch of tools. The one on the left is Apple's Object Capture API, which is it's a terminal thing, but I just access it through a third-party app called 3D Scanner app, and it was great. I used it for the majority of the artifacts, but later in the semester, I discovered this new app called Luma AI, and it is a testament to how quickly and how much more accessible this field is getting like every year. Because Luma AI uses a new technology called NeRF, or neural radiance fields, and it produces models that are much higher fidelity than traditional photogrammetry. And it also cuts through one of the largest problems, which is with reflective objects. Because basically how photogrammetry works is you take about 200 pictures of an object, you walk in circles around it, taking pictures, one at like level with it, then at a little higher angle, and then a little higher angle. And if you can flip over the object, you do that as well to capture the bottom. But yeah, but it like you just throw pictures at it, and then after about 15 minutes of processing, it will spit out a 3D model. And it just looks at little points along the texture of the entire object and like kind of triangulates them to turn it into like a triangle-based model. But if there's a reflective surface, like if it's like silverware or like something like that, like there's reflections in that and it gets a little confused. So Luma cuts through reflection problems. And I previously also I had to learn a lot of Blender editing in order to edit the models because they were a very high polygon count, not optimized at all. And in a video game like setting like this, you need it to be optimized so you can have a lot of artifacts showing at once. So I had to lower the polygon count. I had to clean it up. There were imperfections in it. For example, the converse, I'll just skip ahead. The converse, I couldn't capture the bottom. So I took a separate picture of the bottom and I manually painted that perspective onto the bottom, like texture painting, and other like touch-ups like that. So a lot of workflow for my end had to be developed for that. And then of course, the final product was put in Unity. It's the most common game engine. Definitely for VR development, it's the most common. So yeah, a lot of things I learned in Blender: texture painting, texture stamping, quadraflow, retopology is what is called when I like kind of like create the shape of the object with less triangles, and you have to bake the texture back onto it. But anyway, that's kind of the workflow. Here's some other examples of objects that were created. The pedestal and the lighting was created manually before me as well, and they look good. Halfway through the semester, I also created a 40-minute YouTube tutorial, basically documenting my whole workflow because some of my teammates wanted to try to replicate it. And I'm just going to skip through it a little bit because it's not necessary to see the whole thing. But every dot you see there is a triangle. So this is what it started out as. And after retopologizing it, if it loads, it's less triangles and it's a little cleaner. But basically you can see the workflow here, and I documented everything I learned because I learned a lot because I wanted to make it as easy as possible for other students to add to it. I don't think anyone actually did because unfortunately this workflow was limited to Apple devices and some of my teammates didn't have those, but I'm still working to try and find solutions for them. But basically, yeah, that's another thing I did last year. So what did I learn from this? Well, I learned a lot of Blender, as you saw, but from all the work I did this last spring, it actually helped me land a job with the Office of Information Technology at Georgia Tech. So starting last summer, I worked full-time under the director Didier Contis. Some of you may know him. And I'm continuing the job through this school year part-time. So that's great. The VIP program clearly helps students with opportunities. Yeah. And so from that, I started working on other stuff. I started developing my craft even more. So from the photogrammetry standpoint, I started building it much, much larger. This is a digital twin of Klaus Atrium. I created this I'm also an exec member of the Georgia Tech Extended Reality Club, and we host a hackathon every spring called Immerse GT. I'm repping the t-shirt right now. But it is a digital twin of Klaus Atrium. A lot of reflections in that building, let me tell you, it was a pain. I had to just combine a bunch of really bad looking stuff together, but it works. And yeah, that's published on VRChat. It's published as a side quest app. If you want to download it on your Quest, yeah. But anyway, that's that. Later for my job actually with some of my colleagues, one of them is here, Connor, he's in the back, sorry Connor. But we went even bigger and we captured the entire Flowers Invention Studio. All 4 large maker spaces, including the hallway in between. And it is much higher fidelity because we were using a new platform called Matterport with an expensive camera. But this is crazy. Also, side note, I published this to VRChat as well. As of right now, it has about 1,000 visits and 60 favorites, which is pretty high for numbers on that platform. I mean, it's not huge, but it's like somewhat respectable on that platform. And it is actually done well enough to leave community labs and just become a normal world that anyone can search for, anyone can experience for free. So there's a large reach for VR kind of digital preservation like this. And I think that's amazing. And some other stuff I did with my job this summer is I worked with NVIDIA Omniverse and Microsoft Mesh, 2 platforms exploring how VR can be used for education. And the digital twin aspect is for like virtual prospective student tours. So if they live across the US, they can have a tour of many spaces on campus, like online or in VR. That would be great. This is a little like educational, like moon habitat kind of thing, and moon gravity that you can play around with. It's kind of fun. But yeah, moving on. So in the fall, the previous team lead left. I became the new team lead of the VR sub-team, and I wanted to do a little more with it. I wanted to do something that was more unique to the platform, unique to the medium of VR, because previously we were just replicating a traditional museum, right? But what's exciting about that? Like those already exist and they're already great. They're better if you have an identical real life in VR museum, the real one is better because you can still see artifacts in full fidelity and all that. So I wanted to play to the strengths of VR, and also thematically, like conveniently, we wanted to shift the topic a little more towards a kind of a time capsule. So just the easiest MVP, I guess, to start out with was using what is life like now. So we took a full photogrammetry scan of my freshman dorm, and we scanned a bunch of objects that are very popular for students now that may not have been popular in the past or the future, like you know, iPads, AirPods, electric skateboards, Blue Donkey coffee, stuff like that, Panda Express, stuff that would, it's just a nice like time capsule into life right now. And we will expand it to you integrate more historical artifacts, try to do our best to represent accurately, like maybe life in Georgia Tech in like the 1970s or something. And another great improvement was we had 2 students who were part of the design team. So instead of just choosing random artifacts that we thought looked cool, we had people who were curating the exhibit, so to say. So we had a item directory where they would type descriptions that would be describing the objects, and it may be some unique like immersive interactions when you pick them up, what objects to include, where to place them, all that kind of stuff. So it was more like it had a better vision. It was more concise. And these are some development pictures on the right. The top is a mixed reality home title screen kind of proof of concept, and then the bottom is me importing all of the artifacts into the room. And you can see that. So I'm just going to go ahead and switch back over to a demo. Do we have to share the screen again? Okay. Could you come up and do that really quick while I set up the VR? Could you refresh the page, please? There we go. All right. So now for the another wow moment. See the controllers? Please work. Please work, please work, please work. Hold on. I don't need them. Full hand tracking. So I'm going to navigate to I have a little tablet. I can move wherever I want. I'm going to navigate to the new project, which is the state of where it is right now. And here we are. Hand tracking, all that jazz. I wanted to integrate hand tracking to be much more accessible to people who weren't experienced in VR, because I believe that's kind of where the industry is going, especially with more companies entering like Apple with the Apple Vision Pro. Pre-orders for that actually start tomorrow if you can afford it. But hand tracking is more accessible. And I also wanted to make the title screen more accessible by making it mixed reality. So because I feel people, if they start out seeing their surroundings, they're more comfortable with it. So we have a map of Georgia Tech, and we plan to add more locations to it over time. But all we have right now is this freshman dorm, Hopkins. I lived last year, and there's a little description of it. But if you tap on it, we are now in a completely immersive virtual reality environment of my freshman dorm. And there's a bunch of artifacts, like I said, you can pick up. So, little ramen packet here. It has a little description. I'm gonna go through this a little quickly just for the sake of time. Oops, there you go. If you drop it on the floor, it'll respawn where it's supposed to be. Panda Express, classic. This was really difficult to scan because I was really hungry. Blue Donkey cup. Oops. Here's an example of capturing a transparent or reflective object that worked a little better. I can put that in the trash. More ramen, of course. Little MacBook Air with Canvas on it with all my classes. And then some AirPods, which are very popular. There's a lot that I want to improve this semester with this. Like I have other projects where your hand will actually snap to the shape of the object so it looks more natural rather than just like phasing through it. And of course, like adding immersive things like audio. But basically, that's it. This is where we're at right now, and this is what hopefully we'll build on depending on what students want to work with. Boop. Thank you. Switching screens again, but this is the last time. Yeah, sure.
How many times we students want to touch and we want to see what is the oil, what is certain oil of the texture, and you are not only not allowed to touch, you have to step back and convey that you don't intend to touch it.
Right.
So, I mean, starting your discussion saying why it's important, and you mentioned geographic distance between you and the exhibition, not to mention that the exhibition may consist of objects that are geographically disconnected, but this experience is such a huge.
I completely agree. I agree. Thank you. Thank you for the perfect segue into into the next slide. I have to focus on the window. What should your takeaways be from all of this? No. It was great. I appreciate it very much. Hopefully, what you can take away from this is that even if you have tried VR in the past, or you've tried it, or you haven't tried it, the state that it's in today, right now, it's here right now. It's not something that's in the future. It's not like, oh, we have to wait another 10 years for this tech to be ready. It is here right now. Full eye tracking, full color, or yeah, full hand tracking, full color pass through. That entire experience is standalone on that headset. There's no external computer required. And it's getting more affordable. More companies are making headsets, and it's only going to get better from here. So I hope that you see that VR is here now. I hope that you're inspired to explore it more, to maybe pick up a headset. This is called a MetaQuest 3. It was formerly an Oculus. It's the successor to the Oculus. And explore how you can create immersive environments like this, and And yeah, so I want to thank everyone that helped me along the way, all my team members of the last 2 semesters on the left, and of course, everyone at the library. They were immense help. Alison Valk, of course, the VIP leader, and archivists Allison Reynolds, Kirk Henderson, others that I've worked with, and my boss, Didier Contis, and even more people. All of this would not have been possible without you. So thank you very much.
All right. Another round of applause for Allison too, please.